See how this all works out. Okay, we are live, Michael. We are Friday morning live, which is different than Monday or Wednesday morning live. He's Michael Knight down there in Pasadena, California.
Go Buffs. He's New York Vinnie Richichi. He's in Seattle, Washington. And for all the curious people want to know why we're here so early, we had scheduling problems that we solved by going on the air earlier. We're on the air 24 hours a day somewhere.
Right. Well, now, Michael, don't forget that we're recording this. This is actually going to happen at our regular time.
Well, that's
So,
just insufferable.
and this will hit the air. You'll be able to actually watch yourself on.
As Tony Bruno would say, that is an outrage.
That's an outrage. That's an outrage. Yes, it's strange. It's wonderful, but it works. It gets us where we need to go as human beings. Sometimes you just have to record these things and get them.
I heard a talking head last night say that despite the gains being made in the economy, despite the edging of inflation, despite incredibly high prices on the corporate level, workers are not happy. Workers are not content. The Writers Guild of America, the SAG-AFTRA, now the United Auto Workers, people seeing great profits. The auto industry in Detroit had a profit of the first quarter of this year of 21 billion. That's 21 with a B. And the workers want their share. Disney had a huge profit with the Little Mermaid and God knows what other profits they made. The workers want their share, but the corporations don't want to give their share to the workers. It's easier to demonize them and make them the problem. You got a problem with your economy? I'll tell you where the problem is. It's the workers of America, says Disney, says United Auto Workers, says Ford Motor Company, when in reality, their anger can be justified. And so we see across the nation people walking away from their jobs to get a better deal from someone who will not negotiate. And I thought it was foolish of the big three to be, by that I mean Chrysler, General Motors, and Ford, to link hands and say, we can take this hit. We made 21 billion the first quarter. We got a lot of product out there. We'll raise the prices on those. We'll weather the storm. And I think that's the wrong message. They don't understand what's really going on in the market. They don't appreciate the anger.
Yeah, I agree with the auto work. Listen, there's no denying that there needs to be a readjustment of this ridiculous thing where corporations are making so much money on the back of workers and not compensating them justly. The average worker cannot afford to buy the product he is producing. What worker, a UAW worker who's making 32 or 34, $35 an hour and has great benefits still can go out and buy an $80,000 pickup truck
or a Continental SUV,
right? And they're and that's where it's felt among these workers. It's felt when not only can they not, can go in and buy a quart of milk, take their less than their buying power, but now, excuse me, they can't even go and auto workers are always able to buy cars at a greatly reduced price. That's why they encouraged United States auto workers to drive the cars that they were building, show them off. Other
right?
people would see that and buy the cars, right?
Correct.
Well, now with an inability to buy those cars, you're in essence are wiping out the middle class of this country. You're saying we have a billionaire class, and then we have the workers.
All
And
on
the
the back
gap,
of a Ford Bronco, just so
right,
they can have Ford Broncos.
and the gap is widening. And I don't, nobody denies that the company should make a profit, but when the profit is so large that you can't correctly compensate your workers on the same scale that you would compensate your CEO or your CFO or other executives in the company. They're not looking for $20 million a year, but they're looking for a similar hike in their wages. Now, some of the UAW stuff, I think, is a little crazy. They want a 4-day work week, but they want to get paid for 5. But I don't think that their demands are so far off that the companies couldn't figure out a way to make it happen somewhat. But the problem is that those concessions that they make to the union now pit them against other manufacturers that aren't union, because we now have several manufacturers in this country that are not union. Tesla, not union. Kia and the cars they build here, not union. Hyundai, not union. These companies don't have to adhere to that thing, so they can make their cars less expensive.
They didn't make a deal that would better their workers. They made a deal that would better their hosts in the states where they were. They got tax breaks, they got kickbacks, they got a structured agreement that made it worthwhile. And that, what about the shareholders, Vinny? The shareholders always have an opportunity to get their check and look the other way when it comes time to making money off General Motors, instead of saying, Ford, Chrysler, why don't you have a more equitable agreement with your workers? Your product is, you made a fine truck today. I love your truck, but are you going to be able to sustain this type of quality at this price with a disgruntled workforce that you cannot control and you cannot satisfy?
Well, Mikey, the knife cuts both ways too. The government demand for electrification, the whole car business is changing. Yeah. So you have massive losses to these companies in the area of research and development on electric vehicles. That Chevy Bolt that you buy for $40,000 probably cost General Motors $70,000 to make, but they're not. They're not. That's why you're seeing the disappearance of the lower end cars, because there's just not money in them. There's more money in the SUVs. There's more money in the high ticket cars, and that's why you see this. The Hyundai and Kia and Nissan and Toyota and Honda eating up the small car market, because they're still making cars. But what they've done is they know what a monster they have, so they've raised the prices on their small cars. Again, the average ticket price for a car these days is just short of $50,000.
And remember, corporate pricing is one of the reasons that we have inflation. Corporate pricing is predatory. They're unable to justify the prices based on the market that they're dealing with. And it's taking advantage of the COVID gap, and it's taking advantage of the disruption in the general economy. So you don't know how much eggs are supposed to cost anymore. You don't know how much milk, and you certainly don't know how much a Honda Civic is supposed to cost out the door. You have to do, if you're going to be a buyer, you have to, one, be lucky to find the car you want, and two, really have research and dollars and cents on your side so that you know what you're doing before you walk in.
Right. And then on top of that, you have the added, the added problem for automakers of dealer networks who are trying to go through everybody's pants for as much money as they can get.
Yeah, add-ons.
Which, we've seen in some cases, come to $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. So that $30,000 or $32,000 Chevy Bolt that we're talking about, that by the time you get the add-ons on it, is now a $50,000 Chevy Bolt.
Does anybody out there taking the draconian mood, saying, here's your car, now if you want the mirrors and the steering wheel, that's going to cost you extra. We've got them here, but they don't come with the car.
Well, no, they don't do it like that, Michael, but they do it with add-ons like wax protection and tire and filling your tires with nitrogen and all of these different anti-theft devices. Um, we see these items on uh, different car from different car dealers because they make a profit on them. It's a ridiculous, $2,000, $3,000 for these either devices uh, or stuff that really doesn't do much for you. I mean, etching your ID number on the windshield, or on a certain part of the car, I don't know really helps anybody recover a car.
No,
But yet, they'll sell it to you for $1,500, and they'll say, "Well,
1,500.
don't want to buy it, we won't sell you the car."
Oh, now that I believe has another name.
Well, again, but people have to be strong and say, "Okay, see ya. I'm
You got to
going
walk.
somewhere else."
Like I say, it's been nice here in Extortion Motors. I've always admired the work you do. I love your Chevrolets, but I'm going over to non-extortion motors and buy my car there.
So yeah, you know what? When I just recently bought my friend JD's car
Yeah.
for him and helped him buy his car, that's exactly what I did. I mean, I talked to 100 different Chevrolet dealers, and I finally found one that didn't want to that wouldn't would sell the car without this crap and that crap and this crap and taking a $40,000 car and making it a $60,000 car
An old
because the guy
school auto
wanted to
sale,
sell the car.
of course.
And we had to find a small dealer in Roseburg, Oregon to do that, but we found it. It took a lot of legwork. It took a
Wow.
lot of just hanging up the phone and saying sorry. As much as he wanted the car right away, I was able to tell him, listen, if we want to buy this car, the only way you're gonna get a deal on this car, or not even a deal, is buy it for MSRP. These days, just buying a car for the sticker price is a deal. Now, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, Stellantis, recognize this problem, and they now look at it and say, well, if we could, we would eliminate our dealer network.
Yeah, the problem
We
is the dealer.
sell these cars directly, but they can't do that because laws in most states and some federal laws uh, protect the dealers.
Plus, Vinny, isn't it still the case that the bank owns the car and the bank has a relationship with the dealer, not the manufacturer necessarily? So
Yeah,
in Roseburg, Oregon, Johnny's Bank down at the corner really owns all those Chevrolet Bolts, and they want to profit on each one of them because they're holding the paper on them, but the dealership does not.
right. Right, the dealership doesn't. I mean, the dealership, there's somebody holding the paper on all the cars on his lot. I mean, he's
Right.
financing his cars too. Very few dealers go out and self-finance their floor plan. The cars that are out on the lot, they have to go to a bank and they have to finance that car that's sitting there, and they want to get rid of that car that's sitting there. If you see that car sitting there for 30 days
No
or
good.
60 days,
No
that
good.
dealer wants to get rid of that car because they are paying the interest on the loan for that car, which is a lot of money to, when you multiply that number by 150 cars a guy may have on a lot, a dealer may have sitting on a lot. Um, but yet, the old school mentality of a car dealer exists and is stronger today than ever. But so the companies are exploring ways to bypass that, but who will lose here in the long term will be mom and pop kettle that want to go down and buy a car.
Yeah.
The father who wants to go down and buy a new car for his little girl going off to college for the first time and wants her to be safe and wants her to be in a car that he doesn't have to worry is going to break down on the side of the road on the way out to Pullman at 2:00 in the morning.
A sensible, small first car.
Right, right. There are now, I believe, if I'm right, and I think I am, just 2 cars left in America that you can buy for under $20,000.
What are they?
One is the Mitsubishi, the small little Mitsubishi, and the other is the Kia Rio. And no, excuse me, the Mini. The Kia Rio would be the third, but Kia has announced that they're getting rid of that car. Can't buy a small American car for under $20,000 anymore. Can't do it.
Well, America was never great at capturing the subcompact market anyway.
Well, I mean, they were actually for a while. They put out some really solid quality cars.
The Ford Pinto,
not as good as a Honda,
yeah.
or a Toyota, but there were still fairly good bargains to be found. But again, they make so much more money selling a truck than they do selling a car.
Yeah.
The profit is 5 times, 10 times in some cases what they make selling that $25,000, $28,000 or $29,000 car, which in reality now is a $30,000, $35,000 car.
So here in LA, Vinnie, the writer's strike is like 130 days, 140 days. SAG-AFTRA right behind them with all the actors and all the participants on radio, television, and film on the streets. Nobody's working. Nobody's going to the film festivals to promote the films. It's turning into a long strike. Is the UAW strike going to be a long strike?
I don't think so. To be honest with you, I don't think the car companies can afford it. I don't think that, and I think there is much less of a taste for a bailout, a federal kind of bailout of any of the car companies. I think that it could cripple the economy, or at least hurt it in the breadbasket in the middle American states.
Here in California, yesterday, they said that if you're a striking worker in California, you qualify for unemployment. That's a brand new rule.
Well, that's going to help a lot of people. It will. I don't know that it's going to go that way in Ohio and Michigan and Indiana and Wisconsin, where so many of the American cars are built and or suppliers for those cars are. I think that the companies are motivated to get back to work. They're in the middle of a research and development boom with electric cars. And I think the workers are motivated to go back to work because strike pay is nowhere near what they're making, when they work. I think that both sides are going to have to see the greater good of things and get together. The automakers probably have, the big three probably have a 40, 35-day supply of cars.
It's not much.
Somewhere in there. Chrysler has the biggest. I think Ford has the smallest amount of cars that are ready to go. That you can go to are already assigned to a dealership and going out.
What about the
that,
yeah.
After that, then they're not going to have cars. They're not going to be able to sell cars. They'll lose sales to Kia and Hyundai, and Toyota has a shortage of cars. Honda has a shortage of cars right now. So they're probably not going to profit as much from the person who has left the Chevy showroom and says, I'm going to go down the block to the Toyota showroom and see what they have.
What about the ability of the non-union car makers in the United States to try to fill the gap and steal the market?
Oh, they're firing up their lines right now. Matter of fact, I watched a thing not last night, night before last, with Elon Musk, who was touting the fact that his factory will try to put out more cars this year than they ever have before. They're not a union shop, so they are, able to. And what he's done now with his Teslas is he's lowered the price on them, so you can buy it. You can get a Tesla. You don't have to go through the dealer. You go through a dealer, but it's a company owned dealership where you go in. It's one price. You buy it, and that's it. There's no haggling. There's no, I want this, I want that. You got to buy this, you got to buy that. If you want to go in and buy a $48,000 Tesla, you can walk in and buy a $48,000 Tesla. Nobody's going to lean on you to buy the etchings or the anti-theft or this or that or nitrogen-filled tires or whatever. You're not going to get that. That's part of the reason why you see so many Teslas on the road,
Man,
because
there are
it's a
so many.
hassle-free buying experience.
I can't help but think about Detroit back before the unions. Henry Ford hiring the goons with 4x4s to beat, and in some cases actually murder his workers into submission. They wanted a better deal. Henry Ford said, no better deal. I'm the one who decides the deal. I'm the arbiter of taste and finances in this town. And here's the deal that I made. I made a deal to hire these 50 guys who are going to beat your heads in. And the cops don't care because they love me and they hate you. So they're going to allow it to happen right in the streets. And you can film it if you want and show it years later. But the fact is, that's my response to the union. That's my response to workers' rights. That's my response to a raise.
Right. And if it wasn't for people like Jimmy Hoffa with the Teamsters and other people like that who handled Ford and these other people with force.
Force meeting force.
Workers wouldn't have some of what they got today. Now, are they asking for too much? I think the companies need to give, and I think that the unions need to give. I don't think a 4-day work week and getting paid for 5 is going to make things better for anybody except the person that's getting the 4-day work week.
Is it true that some union auto workers have a 6-day week, 10 hours a day?
Maybe in rare cases, but I think there's hourly workers that are given the option of that. I'm not sure that there are union workers required to work those kinds of hours. And if they are, obviously they have to be compensated for them. Anything over a 40-hour work week has to be compensated. Now, part of what the union is wanting is there's a tier system where if you come in and you get a job now, you get paid less money than the guy or woman who has been there for 10 years, 15 years. And they want to change that. And they want it all to be, you come in, you start making $35.95 an hour from the first day that you're there. Listen, the unions gave the automakers a lot of concessions over the past 10 years.
To keep the business alive.
Right. To keep, GM was going under 3 or 4 times, since Clinton was president. And you go all the way back to Lee Iacocca and Chrysler. And the federal government has bailed out the automakers, and the union has bailed out the automakers. And what the union people are basically saying is, we want, you're showing record profits. We want a piece of that action.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them.
Vinnie, if they hadn't bailed them out, the auto industry would have gone the way of the steel industry in Pittsburgh. It would have disappeared.
Right.
But it didn't. And so now imagine Pittsburgh was still a steel town, but they were dealing with a modern workforce. It would be a completely different industry with a completely different salary structure. And that's the challenge that Detroit has. They have survived all their problems. America still needs cars, but the workforce of America has evolved. It's not the same guys. It's not the guy with the lunch pail coming in to do the man's bidding and put together another Impala. It's more sophisticated than that. It's more robot assisted. There's the future The medical demands have changed. The medical problems sustained by workers with repetitive motion has changed. And the mindset of the modern worker is less tolerant. It won't accept the ways of the past. And so they try an old trick, and it always works to an extent, and that is the union must have the ability to strike, and then it must not be afraid to strike if the company won't come to the table. And that's what we had here in LA. It's a classic case of the studios, which are making a fortune and won't even release their streaming numbers because it's a closely held secret. And they won't play ball. They won't talk. They absolutely stonewall them. And so what they're taking is a modern workforce that you see on television every night, that you see in the movies at the theater, and they're treating it like it's 1930, and Henry Ford is dispersing the mob with 4x4s. And that is not that is a misreading of the workforce, a misreading of the situation, and it's costing them. It's costing them dearly. And when they're done, Vinny, the old feelings of hate and mistrust will be there stronger than ever.
I agree with you 100%. Again, you're looking at a group of workers who have been asked to give up and give up and give up so the industry could survive. And the industry survived. And as a matter of fact, the industry really is prospering right now. The auto industry, the American companies are making. I don't know about Stellantis. Stellantis could be, but there's this coin going around, and they're looking for. They're looking. The union is looking for their piece of the pie. Now, Ford's offer, their last offer that was put on the table, they're not negotiating today. Everybody's taking a day off today, although I don't think Biden likes that. President Biden is not exactly happy about that. But according to the president of Ford, the this is what they've offered the union. Significantly increased their proposal on wage increases. I think they're around 17 or 18%. I know the Chrysler was in at 20% on wage increases. They've offered them cost of living adjustments, fully eliminating wage tiers so that all employees get industry leading wages and shorten from 4 to 8 years the time it takes hourly employees to reach the top wage.
To get vested,
Contributions to in progression retirement savings, protected health care benefits, and more paid time off, 5 weeks of vacation, 17 paid holidays a year because they've added Juneteenth as a holiday.
Good.
So that's that's what Ford's offer has been. And I can't imagine that the unions are going to look at that in those offers after a while. Now, I think you also have a guy here in Fane, the head of the UAW, who is trying to assert himself as a leader of men and women, workers. He's holding a rally today with Bernie Sanders. All of a sudden, Sean Fane is on, TV and so on and so forth. The UAW is in the spotlight, and there have been a number of scandals involving the union and the automakers over the past 5-6 years.
Retirement fund scandals, that type of thing.
More collusion and things like that. There was a fairly cozy relationship with some of these companies settling different union things. So if you didn't read the Detroit papers, you probably never knew about it. But there are people that have gone to on both sides, from the manufacturers and the unions, who have gone to jail over these things. And I think that Fane, who is fairly new as the president, I think he's there less than a year. I think he also needs to do something to establish his power. And so it probably a short strike benefits his standing, benefits him getting his union guys. And when I say guys, I mean, please don't email me and say you always say guys. I mean guys and men and women and people who are undecided in the whole realm of things. But I think that he needs to assert himself as a leader, as somebody who is on par with Jim Farley and Mary Barra and all of the other people who are doing the negotiating. And this guy's a firecracker. This guy is he's he's not gone quietly. He's not afraid to stand up and say, this is what I believe and this is what I think. And I think we're getting screwed. And I think these people are screwing us. And I'm going to fight for my workers. It's different than the UAW has had pretty much since the days of Walter Reuther back in the 60s.
It's funny how the guy from UAW is in front of all the cameras, but nobody from the Ford Motor Company, for the most part, is willing to make a public statement. They just
No,
they play
Jim
the long
Farley's
game.
been out front on it. I mean, he was at the auto show the day before yesterday and taking reporters' questions in a scrum. And Mary Barra did a number of interviews this morning and yesterday morning with different news outlets. So I'm not going to say that the automakers haven't been trying to make their case in public. They've been out there doing their thing and trying to present their side of the story. None of them, maybe Farley to a certain extent, the president of Ford, are really as exciting as this guy that runs the union. He's out there and he's your average. He doesn't look like a union president. He's not dressed in a slick tie and a suit and shark skin suit, and he doesn't look like one of those guys who drive Cadillacs and meet Jimmy Hoffa for lunch. He looks like one of the guys off of the line.
Jimmy, manja, aren't you hungry? What are you doing? Don't just sit there.
Don't sit in the trunk, Jimmy. We don't want you in the trunk. But so there's he's relatable.
Yeah,
much more than Mary Barra or Jim Farley or most of the people. I haven't seen. And the other thing that the union I think is pretty upset about, and I don't know that I blame them as well, is that I think the automakers took this a little bit for granted. They, Shane was running back and forth from different negotiating sessions and going here and going there and doing this and doing that, and the automakers weren't even sending their top people. When Jim Farley wasn't sitting in on all these negotiating sessions, he had 3 goons and a geek sitting there. Okay, I'll call Mr. Farley and see. Well, if he's too busy to be at these negotiations,
we get the message.
He must want to strike.
Yeah.
And I can see in some of what I'm reading out of Detroit, that mentality has kind of sunk into the union.
Why is the auto industry so important to America? And I know the answer to this, but I love to ask questions I know the answer to. Why is it so important to America that it has to be rescued when it's in trouble, that it has to be unleashed to do its own pricing when times are good, and allowed profits of $21 billion per quarter? They're not paying the government back for everything.
Well, they are paid. They have paid the government back.
So is that $80 billion a year that we're talking about?
Well, they've paid. I know that. Well, number one, I know Ford didn't take any money in the last bailout. I remember specifically. Right. I remember talking to Alan Mullally about that, and Ford was adamant about not taking a dime because they didn't want the federal restrictions that came along with it.
In the image of Henry Ford, right down to their shoes.
Right. GM and Chrysler took money. And from what I understand, and again, things may slip by me. I don't read every.
Not on this topic. Not on this topic, Vinnie. I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that both Stellantis and General Motors have paid back their government loans, subsidies, whatever it was that they were supposed to pay back to the government. Matter of fact, I know GM did, because I remember there was a big press release that said that they paid back every dime plus interest that the government. So, in some ways, the government has made out okay because they've gotten probably more interest out of GM than they would have gotten out of lending the money to a bank.
Well, it's something that America absolutely requires. We need cars and trucks, and there's no doubt about it. Everybody gets in one to do something, to do anything,
Well,
and
we need the jobs.
right.
It's I haven't been back in Pittsburgh for 10 years. That part of the country runs on the auto industry. You go through Ohio. Not too far from Pittsburgh is a city in Ohio called Lordstown, and Lordstown is a city that's built on a General Motors plant. There is
Probably a big one.
has its own exit on the Ohio Turnpike, and it's where for many years Chevrolet Cruises and other vehicles were made. Pickup trucks were made there. It employed half of the eastern part of the state of Ohio between the plant and the attendant facilities that go along with keeping it going. Uh, and when GM shut that plant down several years ago, it kicked the economy in the nuts.
Oh yeah,
Now,
tailspin.
GM, to their credit, opened up another plant uh, within a stone's throw of that plant, where they're building their Ultium battery platforms and doing battery research. Another company named Lordstown Motors is in that plant now, and I don't know that they actually built a single pickup truck yet. You also have a lot of these startup companies that are building electric cars now. It's a free for all out there. You got Rivian, you have Lucid, you have all of these different companies that are starting up and building cars, and are not subject to, they're not unionized. So if you go out and you buy a Lucid for $90,000 or whatever it is, you're not buying a union vehicle. You're buying a vehicle that was built by non-union personnel. So to go back to your question quickly, it's important for America, the auto industry, because of the number of people it employs. And the auto industry is uniquely American. I mean, yes, there's German and there's Korean and there's Japanese, but there's something about the American auto industry that's a part of our psyche. It's a part of who we are. I don't think there's anything that we're more identified with um, than cars. It
And
represents freedom.
and the funny thing about Americans is, you want the little Chevy, you want the Chevy Volt, or would you like the Cadillac? And invariably, Americans say, "Well, I have to say, Cadillac is beautiful. It comes in black. Oh yes, we have it in black. Yeah, I'll go that way. I'll take the Caddy. I think I'll make the jump from Chevrolet to Cadillac. And I know they were designed that way in the beginning, but the idea of what does America want? Well, America wants a nice car. America wants a ride. It wants that combination. That's why the GTO was so hip. It was a beautiful luxury car, but it was a sports car. It said, I could have had a Lincoln Continental, but I'm driving this instead. And we like to make that statement. We like to have that identity. And with the choices that we have in the history of our cars answer that need. And sometimes they link up beautifully. Right now, the only thing that's amiss is the corporate pricing and the mess that the workers feel that they're in. Corporations are doing fine. There's always going to be the big three, we assume.
Well, I don't know if that's true. I
The
tend
big
to
two.
think Stellantis at some point may uh, not drop out, but be a different company than we're seeing
Well, there's
right
Dodge
now
trucks. Yeah.
because there's just you know the the product. I mean, what saves Stellantis is Jeep. I mean, people still want Jeeps.
Are Dodge trucks doing well?
They're doing okay. Not as good as Ford and General Motors. It kind of goes back and forth. I mean, there's a few years there where Ram really kind of went to the front of the pack, and that kind of settled down, and Ford jumped back up. The one who's really struggling in trucks, I think, right now is Chevy.
How
Their
come?
their trucks just aren't. It's funny. Ford F-150s are the most popular vehicle in America. It's also the most recalled vehicle in America,
They're building
and
them
that's
too
another
damn
thing that
fast.
hasn't been getting mentioned in this whole maelstrom here of strikes and quality. And this is the quality of Ford vehicles has really gone down the pipes a bit. And I never thought I would say this, but I'm a fan of Ford. I
Oh,
like what
well,
they're doing. I like their cars, but I just had a brand new Ford Escape, had 1,000 miles on it. Open up the hatch in the back, and the weather stripping is out. It wasn't installed properly. When you're asking somebody to spend $60,000 or $50,000 for a car,
get the hatch right.
you got to get the doors right. You got to get those are the simple things that people see right away.
Haven't we always in America had a different fit and finish standard than, say, foreign brands like Japanese cars and German cars?
Well, yeah, but also keep in mind that for many years the volume of Japanese and German cars weren't the same as American cars.
They had more time.
So they had more time. They had more, now that the volume has gone up on these foreign cars, uh, sometimes I think the quality control can be less. Can be less. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it can be. There are certain instances where you can go back through history and look at certain brands that you would have expected to be beyond reproach. And the quality of those vehicles have gone down for whatever reason.
I
Uh,
suggest you run the show tomorrow on your auto show. I usually I waive my fee, but in this case, I think several $1,000s is granted
yeah,
for
I'll
the
send you.
overall budget.
I Mikey, and just there. This is probably not a good time for these companies to have a strike. They're just recovering from the whole COVID and supply chain situations. I
Yeah.
understand that that the workers feel like they need to be respected and they want more money. And I think the company should get off the dime and give them a fair piece of the pie. As I think the plumbing industry should give their people a fair pie, or the contractors, or
Correct.
is whoever is whoever's job, whoever in business is dependent on the backs of their workers, as the auto industry is. Um, I think they ought to compensate those workers well. I think that that's part of where America has gone wrong, is that we haven't respected the workers that we have in this country. We know it because we're in radio, and nobody respects you in radio. The bosses could for the most part, could give a crap less about you.
Interchangeable parts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
once you go out the door with the box in your hand, they could give a crap less. Um,
Plus, they've taken those salaries for morning radio jocks from $200,000 a year on the average to $30,000 a year, and if they could get it for nothing, which it sounds like they are doing, they would take that as a solution.
right. because again, it's not about doing good radio. It's about keeping the needles moving.
It's not about radio at
Right.
all.
And that's why radio is dying. In its current form. We hear time and time again about what will radio do to reinvent itself? What will radio do to save itself? What will radio do? And the plain fact of the matter is you need to have talented people who would rather be in a radio station talking to people than writing or performing or doing other things besides radio.
Also, it's like asking the auto industry what's new and important in the auto industry. How can we make these cars without workers? How can we make them without actually putting them together? What would the auto industry look like if you didn't have workers in factories? Just a product that you could sell. Just somehow you'd have a car for people to buy. How did it get together? We'll work on that. We'll get to the details later. But that's radio for you. They want to make a radio show without radio people. Hopefully without a radio station. Can we do it without a studio? Do we need microphones? Why do we need all this room? Why do we need people to cover the news? Can't we do it without all that? And their answer invariably is, oh, yeah, I think we can. I think we can make a really good radio show with no radio elements involved.
Well, you know what? There's people that say that that's what artificial intelligence is going to do. I mean, you don't think that there's heads of radio groups that are looking at artificial intelligence and saying, this is the answer to all our prayers. We don't have to have anybody except one board operator in the radio station. We don't even really need them.
The artificial network.
We can just do it on, we don't need anybody. We can run a whole radio group without any humans except the salespeople.
Coming up on 9 o'clock in the morning in California here on the artificial network. I'm not here, and with any luck, maybe you won't be either.
And I'm not here either. I mean, I'm a figment of some program director who sits in an office somewhere in Somewhereville, and and they're pumping stuff into the artificial automatic intelligence thing, and this is what you're getting.
Now, for your morning show, you can have New York Vinnie, or you can have Florida Bob, or you can have Chicago Jimmy, or you can have LA Hollywood Henderson. Who do you want? Can I get a combination? Yep, you can have a combination of any two. I'll take Hollywood Henderson and New York Vinnie, please. Very good. By the way, they're on the air now on your show.
Whoever accent gets you off, that's what you can have. That's why you have HD radio. Probably going to be a little tough to make it work for sports radio because you have to have emotion and you have to have the current scores and the latest news. But for music, you can have Spanky Sprankowitz sitting there, spinning the oldies, and nobody knows if he's real, he's not real, she's alive, she's not alive.
And because there's no content that's of any importance, it doesn't matter. Is that a robot talking to me? Because it got those names wrong. Possibly.
It always cracks me up. The artificial intelligence always cracks me up, because everybody's using it. Not everybody, but many people are using it on YouTube now. And when you can't say a particular word, that it's that just either the cadence or the way they say particular words or whatever it is gives it away. And it bothers me to no avail because, how do you look at that and say this is better than watching a television show? I don't know. It bothers me, but I get bothered by machines and computers replacing people. I still get upset about calling a business and hearing a computer with the press 1, press 2, press 3 for this, press 5 for that. That should be people doing that.
I always like it that they caution you. Listen closely because our numbers have changed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Our numbers have changed.
That's good to know.
The first thing you get hit with is los abro dos para español. So before you even talk to me in English,
I got to talk to you
in Spanish.
And also Slovakian.
And Slovakian.
Vinnie speaks fluent Slovakia.
Oh, I've been speaking it for before there was a Slovakia. I spoke Slovakian. So I
And
mean,
so you were an early bloomer.
yes, I was, and I had late bloomers. Sometimes used bloomers because
Sometimes
that's
pink bloomers.
no, no. By the way, speaking about pink, I went and saw the Barbie movie last night.
Yeah. Are you
Have you
feeling?
seen that?
I managed not to see it so far. How are we doing?
Mikey, you see it. It's definitely worth it. I mean, it's you take it for what it is, but I thought it was a good movie. I laughed. I thought it was there was some interesting references in it. And I thought it was worth I don't know if it would have been worth $15, but I think we paid $8 to go to the Crest, which is one of my favorite little movie
Oh
theaters.
yeah, good.
And
Well, here's something that you can think about, and we could have done a whole show on it. It tells you that the times we live in. The state of California has forbidden the use of the main ingredients that make Skittles. Skittles includes ingredients that are carcinogenic, problems with the manufacturer. Skittles in California have parted ways. The same week that California suggests that mushrooms and other natural psychedelics like peyote should be legalized. So be careful what candy you eat when you come to the great state of California. It's not like I didn't warn you. You thought they were Skittles. No, you're gonna be fine, but it's gonna take a day. Okay, stick with me.
yeah,
I've been here before. You're gonna be fine. Let's get outside. Let's get out into the nature because you're gonna need that. You don't want to be in an apartment for the rest of this day, not after eating what you just ate.
right. As a wise man once said, hold on.
So that's California. We're letting our freak flag fly, but we're not going to be taking Skittles any longer. We're not going to fall for that. We're not rubes. We're insane. We're slightly flippy, but we're not rubes. So keep your Skittles, and we'll take the mushrooms and peyote. And when I say we'll take them, I mean, yeah, probably.
And I wonder why people don't want to move to they wonder why people don't want to move to California anymore.
Actually, anybody who wants to leave is welcome. The borders are open, and a lot of our expatriates are going to Texas or to someplace in the South. And I say, just give me a call in a year and tell me how that's going for you. That's fine with us. It's a free country, and people who want to come to California are always welcome. People who want to leave California are once again encouraged to do so.
Well, it always makes me laugh because again, it's a very popular subject on YouTube. Is people are leaving California in droves. They're going to Texas, and then the next most popular subject is why the hell did I ever leave California? Yeah, it was great. It's like the people that leave, myself included, New York. I mean, you leave New York, and when you're there, it looks attractive to get out of there, but that means that you spend a life looking at New York from the outside,
Yeah.
as opposed to living in New York City and absorbing all of what that means, and it means a lot.
And also, how living in New York is an acquired set of rules and regulations and things you do and things you don't do. Once you
Right,
know how, you're a powered New Yorker. You're like the rest of them. You're clued in.
but you always look back at it and say, gee, I wasn't there for that, or gee, I wasn't there for that, or
Yeah.
gee, if I wanted to go see that, I could have just jumped on the F train and gone down, gone into the city. It's really
Plus,
into the city, which meant going into Manhattan.
plus, you know
Uh,
what it's like to have the Pope come to town and goes, "Geez, the Pope came. What happened? Yeah, we can handle it. We got it together. He's
oh,
up
you
doing
can
his Pope
handle,
stuff. We're doing our stuff.
yeah. I mean, you can handle the Pope, Fidel Castro, Nikita Khrushchev, and all at the same time.
Name it. Yeah. Who do you got? Because this is the Big
We'll
Apple.
and in many instances, you have them staying within 2 or 3 blocks of each other. I remember one time when I was a kid, you had Pope, was it Pope Paul at that point, staying on 67th Street, no, 66th Street. You had the Khrushchev staying on 67th Street where the Russian embassy was, and Castro was staying around the corner, like on 3rd Avenue, where the Cuban consulate apartment building was. There was another guy, I forget what, but within 4 or 5 blocks on the east side, you had, half of the world leaders.
Well, Biff Jiggerman was in town. He was at the Waldorf.
Biff was at the Waldorf. Well, no, actually, Biff that time stayed at the Algonquin and sat at the round table with a number of Illuminati.
I remember the last thing I heard Biff say was drinks.
Well, yeah, if you get a seat at that table, you're buying.
You're buying.
Which is really many times the only reason that they'll sit you at that table is because
you're a rube. Why am I the only guy from Poughkeepsie sitting at this table? You're buying. Here we go.
Because we looked at your credit card and the limit was okay. So meet Mr. Soroyan, meet Mr. Kerouac,
Dorothy Parker.
Right. Meet all these people who will be more than happy to have. Oh, here comes Hunter Thompson. He'll be happy to have a double on you.
Yeah. And he is carrying his weapons with him. So caution, right. Caution.
And do yourself a favor and don't turn on the lights. Oh. So we like it dark in here.
We like it like we like it. You're going to like it too. Well, Vinnie, have a great show tomorrow. What do you got planned? You going to do the strike?
We're going to delve into the UAW strike, but as you said, I may just play this segment and and leave it at that. John Vincent is going to join us from U.S. News and World Report. He's the automotive writer for that. He was at the Detroit Auto Show, which I'm hearing from people was like a funeral.
Wow. How come?
Even though they rolled out a number of new models and had a number of new models there, it was, with the impending strike going on, the media days were certainly not as joyous and as festive. They moved it from January to September.
For the weather?
First time they've had the full show since COVID, but half of the manufacturers didn't show up to the show. And this is arguably, again, a lot of people think, well, the New York Auto Show really is the number one, but the Detroit Auto Show should be the number one auto show.
That's where the industry lives.
It's the company town.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be a problem, but yet all of these different, people that I've seen reports from that have gone there, said that it was not a happy place to be. And now the public part of the show starts today. They have a big gala tonight. And then from the gala, they, the show goes on for a week. And it's going to be interesting to see because I don't remember when an auto show has been held when all three manufacturers have never been on strike at the same time before.
So we're breaking new ground, unfortunately.
So everything is historical, and it should be hysterical at the auto show. So we'll do that. We'll talk about, we're going to review the Ford Escape. And I'm driving the new, a car that I absolutely love, the new Subaru Crosstrek.
Oh, I bet that's great.
Model 2024.
Yeah.
And there's no way to get around it. This car is one of the best cars out there for what it does, for taking you and your family on a little road trip and maybe taking them on a little off the road trip. This car does it as good, if not better, than most cars in its class.
I love the Subaru. I do. I love them.
Yeah, it's really, it's just such a good car. It's one of those cars that you rely on. I've put 3 or 4 family members in Subarus and close friends that are like family, and not a one has ever had a complaint about a Subaru.
They're well made, and they're so right on with what their target is and what they want to achieve. Their image and their ability to answer that image and their engineering and the fit and finish and the beautiful sturdiness of it.
And they're great commercials. I mean, they have some of the best commercials. You know, those dog commercials are